Okay, we are officially recording. I'm not going to lie when I tell you that today has been the most difficult day of recording that I've had thus far. I don't know what it was, but every single piece of technology was fighting me and I almost gave up, but I persevered because I am dedicated to making this podcast. And we are trying something new today. We are filming this episode, which just adds another element of difficulty to it, but I also feel like it will be great for the viewers to have a visual to go along with the audio. It'll be nice for me to be able to put that on social media. I don't think that I'll put the video on Spotify because to me it's a little strange to have video on Spotify, but I will probably be making a YouTube channel where you can watch the video if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's episode. I thought it would be fun to do a little story time today, and it is going to be about the time that I ended up in the emergency room from a photo shoot. And actually, it wasn't the only time that that's happened, but we'll save the other story for later, and let's get into the time where I was burned by a fire dancer on a photo shoot. So that might sound like it's a clickbait title, but it's not. That is exactly what happened. And I'm gonna tell you the story. Okay. I don't know where to look. I'm always paranoid that I'm not recording, so I'm constantly looking at the computer, but I feel like I need to look this way for the camera. So the year was 2018, which was, I can't do math, six years ago. And I was actually in Miami for a job, but I was living in LA at the time, had flown to Miami for a job, and I got a text message from a friend asking if I wanted to come to Mexico for a job. And I was like, okay, what are the details? And so she tells me the brand that it's for, which is a brand that I had heard of before. I had never shot for them, but they were like pretty popular at the time, I would say. And so she's like, tells me where it's at. She's like, it's going to be so fun. We're going to go for like a week. So it's kind of like a vacation too. And so I'm like, okay, I would be down, but I definitely want to have the client go through my agency just in case. Like, I mean, if you listen to last week's episode, just because you go through your agency doesn't mean you're going to be protected. But I just felt like it would be better if I went through my agency just in case I didn't get paid, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if you are signed with an agency and you accept work outside of your agency, you can get sued. So I don't ever do that. I always try to go through my agents and send clients, especially for big jobs like this, to my agency to book me through my agency. So I was like, yeah, I'm down, but they need to hit up the agency to book it. So I hear back like a few hours later or something because the job was actually the next day, or we were leaving the next day. So I think I'm actually on the flight. I don't have service. I land at like midnight and they're like, you're confirmed. So I had to like go home, quickly pack, head to the airport the next morning. And this brand is owned by someone who has a reputation in LA for being in the party scene. So I kind of went into it a little weary because I knew that it wouldn't just be a job for work. It would be some partying included. And not that I don't like to party, but like this person wasn't really my friend. Like I just didn't know if I felt 100% comfortable with that. And so I was just like a little bit weary about how the job would go. But it was a good rate. Like I said, the brand was pretty popular at the time. And like I did want to go to Mexico. So the trip starts off by my friend who invited me on the job being late for the airport, even though we were both supposed to ride with the owner of this brand to the airport. So I have to go alone with him, which I was already a little bit uncomfortable about. Ended up being fine, was a little awkward, whatever. Get to the airport, get on the flight. And the job was in Sayulita, which is a town outside of Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, which is a really cool town. It's pretty small, but what I was told was that we were going to be staying in this Airbnb that was outside of kind of like the main city of Sayulita, and that we would have like little golf carts that we could drive back and forth to the town and like we could get around on our own. So fly in, we get there, and it's me, my friend who's the other model, the owner of the brand, a creative director, a producer, a makeup artist, a photographer, and the photographer's girlfriend. So there's 8 of us total. So we leave in an SUV to the little palapa, it was called a palapa. So it's like a building that has only three walls, and then it's like open. And it was beautiful. Like the place we were staying was gorgeous, had a beautiful view of the ocean. It was a little unconventional with the fact that it is missing a wall. And we're like in the middle of the jungle, which was interesting. And I'm super allergic to mosquitoes, so I was a little scared. And there's mosquito nets everywhere. So I was like, there must be a lot of mosquitoes here. I was a little bit scared that I was going to get eaten alive. I've had a really bad reaction before, so I was like a little bit worried. So we had like the one room that was kind of enclosed. It did have 4 walls. But so we get there, we like unpack all of our stuff, and then we drive together to the town to have dinner. And it's at that point that we realize there are no golf carts. We are not going back and forth on our own to the town, because the road is literally like an Indiana Jones jungle road. Like you're a little bit off-roading. Even in a big SUV, it was like kind of dangerous. And it's also, I want to say it was like a 30-minute walk from where we were staying to like the actual town center. So I was already kind of like a little stressed about that, because I'm like, okay, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. I just prefer to have freedom when I go places. Also, there's no food around us. There's nothing. We're basically in the middle of the jungle. So I already kind of like register that in my brain, and I'm like, okay, this could be a little bit difficult. And also, the only person that's able to drive the rental car is the owner of the brand, who, like I said, likes to party. So just keep all of that in mind. So the way that the schedule was presented to me by my agency was that we'd get there on day 1, shoot on days 2 and 3, and fly back on day 4. So I want to say we were there, like told we were going to be there for a total of 4 days. So I can't exactly remember what time we got there on day 1 and like exactly what went on day 1. I want to say the first night we had all gone to dinner together, and we stayed out like pretty late. Next day, wake up in the morning. At some point it's been communicated to me that that's actually not a shoot day. It's going to be a location scouting day. So we wake up in the morning and there's no food in the Palapa, because like I said before, it's in the middle of nowhere and we're starving. So we're kind of trying to wait for the owner of the brand to wake up so we can all go together. It's me and I think the creative director and the producer that are up, and we're like, you know what, let's just walk because we're starving. So we go on this like 45 minute walk through the jungle, which was actually fine and fun. Didn't feel unsafe in the daytime. Get to the town, we have breakfast, whatever. Then eventually the rest of the crew like comes and meets up with us in town. We're like driving around, looking at locations, and we ended up all getting dinner together at this restaurant. And it was kind of late when we started eating dinner. And so we're all having dinner, whatever. People are drinking. I'm not, because I have to shoot the next day. And the time is ticking away. So it's like, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. And I'm starting to get stressed out because my call time was like 6 a.m. the next day. So I'm like, I still got to go back and like shower and shave and self-tan and do all this stuff. And like, I would like to get a decent amount of sleep. So I was getting stressed. I didn't want to be like annoying or like a party pooper, but I'm like, hey guys, like we got to get back. And I don't think we ended up leaving until like midnight or 1 a.m. Mind you, the owner of the brand has been drinking pretty much all day long and is now driving us on this Indiana Jones treacherous ass road. I swear to God, we almost like flipped off the cliff at one point. So I'm like, great. This is really setting the tone, and it was setting the tone. So we get back to the Palapa, do all the things I need to do, get in bed super late. I'm stressed out. Wake up the next morning at 6 a.m. I had the earlier call time. I'm exhausted. And again, there's no food. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great way to start off a long shoot day, starving. So do hair and makeup, start shooting. Maybe by like 7 or 8, my friend gets her hair and makeup done. She starts shooting, and 10 a.m., it's 11 a.m., it's noon. And the plan was to shoot all around like the beach and the Palapa that we were at, and then take the car and go to the town and shoot all around the town for the rest of the day. And so that was like the point when we were all going to eat. And I'm like, I can't wait until lunchtime. It's also like so hot outside. We're like running around. So I'm starting to die and fade and get very hangry. And, if you've ever tried to do something when you're hangry, that doesn't go well. So yeah, I started being like, hey, we got to go. So eventually I think around like 2 or 3 p.m., I actually probably have receipts of this. Let me see. In the photos where I'm finally eating food, it is 4 p.m. So that was my first meal of the day. And it was also funny because we went to a restaurant and then we were using the food as a prop. And I'm like trying to eat it. And they're like, we got to take photos first. And I'm like, I'm starving. Sorry, I'm going to eat this food. So finally we eat according to the photo at 4 p.m. and we're still shooting. And like I said, my call time was at like 6 a.m. Let me do some math. Yeah, I want to say, I'm pretty sure my call time was 6 a.m. I could probably also find the receipt of that. But sun starts going down and I'm like, okay, So an 8-hour day would have been me wrapping at 2 p.m. So I'm already past a full day of work. And like I mentioned before, it's very hot. We're sweating a ton. I'm like drenched from head to toe in coconut oil. They keep spraying my hair down. I'm just uncomfortable. It's sandy. It's like stinky in some of the places we're shooting at. I'm just like starting to really get over it. And the owner of the brand the entire day is like drinking and just being annoying and making like inappropriate jokes about getting Viagra and like all this stuff. And I'm starting to lose it. My patience is dwindling. And at this point, the sun has gone down. We are shooting well into the nighttime, and I'm starting to get stressed out because I'm like, realistically, how long are we going to be shooting for? Because it's clearly not an 8-hour shoot day. And as I mentioned before, I had been booked for a 2-day shoot. The first day, we didn't end up shooting. It was a location scouting day. So I'm starting to do the math. If 2 + 2 = 4, I'm like, are they cramming a 2-day shoot into one day? Because if that's the case, we're going to have a problem. So, they were trying to make it cute and fun. They're like, do you guys want to get a drink? Blah, blah. I'm like, I want to go home. I'm trying to wrap it up. So at one point they rented a hotel room in the town because we just had so much stuff with us and like we didn't have a place to change. And so it was getting really inconvenient. So we did have a hotel room like in the town that we were using to change at, to do like hair and makeup touch-ups, just to cool down because it was so hot. And at this point, yeah, my frustration is known. And I'm starting to be like, when are we going to wrap it up? I don't even know what time it is at this point, but again, we're shooting well into the night and there's basically like no end inside of this shoot. And so I start kind of being like, what's the plan? What's the game plan here? And so I don't even know. Again, let me check the receipts. At the point when I took this photo, I'm going to insert photos into this video as well. At the point where I took this photo, where I look completely exhausted and like I'm losing my mind because I was, it is 10:47 p.m. So do the math on that. We started shooting at 6 a.m. It's now 10:47 p.m. 17 hours? Did I do that math right? I'll double check. So I'm over it. And I'm like, hey guys, it's been real. It's been fun. Hasn't been real fun. Let's wrap it up. I can't do this for much longer. So remember, it's around 11 p.m. and I've told the producer at this point, it's time. We got to wrap. So he's like, okay. We just like, let me look through the clothes, let me see what's a priority, and he narrows it down to like one more shot. So at this point we're in the town, it's obviously dark outside, the owner has been drinking, he's like honestly getting on my nerves so badly, and at this point I can't even hide it anymore, and he's like, come on, it's the last shot, or like, let's go, and I'm literally standing there like arms crossed, like I can't. And there are these fire dancers down at the end of the street because it's like kind of the main street in the town. And I can't remember whose idea it was to do this final shot with the fire dancers. Probably was his. And he's like, yeah, let's go shoot with these fire dancers. Like, it's the last shot. And I just immediately got a bad feeling about it. Number one, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere in Mexico. There's no really like rules or regulations. And also, I'm just not a big fan of fire and elements of danger, so I'm like, absolutely not, I'm not doing it. So I'm just standing on the side, and my friend is like, I'll do it, and I'm like, go for it, girl, that's all you, go for it. So she goes and she's shooting. So eventually everyone's like, come on, it's the last shot, like you can do it, just go. And I'm like, oh my god, if it will mean being done with this day, I'll just do it. So I go out there and we're standing in the middle of the street, her and I next to each other, kind of like leaning on each other, posing, whatever. Also in the photos, I don't know if I can show the photos because maybe if I blur the clothing out, but because I don't want you guys to know which brand this was, obviously. But in the photos, I look so pissed and also kind of scared. Like my face is just like, I'm not having it. So we're standing next to each other. I don't even think we were shooting for a minute. And there, like I was saying before, there was one on the side of her, one on the side of me. So we're like framed by them. And I can't remember what like contraption the one next to her had, but the one next to me had like these like bulbs on the end of like chains. So basically they dip the things that are going to light on fire in this like napalm gel, and that's what ignites. And so the guy next to me has these chain things that he's whipping around in circles, and basically the liquid that they dip it in, which catches on fire, gets flung off of these chain things onto me. And so I immediately feel I thought I was on fire because I can't see what's going on, obviously. And so my first instinct, I thought my hair was on fire. So my first instinct is to like grab it to make sure it's not. And it had actually been flung onto my shoulder, and my skin was so hot that when I touched it, that it burned my hand as well. And my first instinct was also, as this is happening, is to just run away because, you know, I'm getting burned. So I'm holding my shoulder and like running down the street. And like, I've never been in pain in a way that tears just immediately started falling from my eyes. Like, I'm sobbing, and yeah, take off running, and someone comes after me. This part's kind of a blur. I want to say maybe it was the producer and maybe my friend. And I'm like freaking out. I'm shaking. I don't really know what's going on. I'm looking at my hand. I can see that it's burned. And then I'm like crying. And then they walk me to the hotel room that we had booked in the town, so that we can like assess what's happening. And I'm like, I get my phone. I call my mom. I think it would have been like 2 a.m. or something in New Mexico. And I call my mom and I'm like, I just got burned. Like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, is there a hospital? And I'm like, no, I don't even think there's a hospital here. And if there was, it wouldn't be open this late at night anyway. So she's like, they need to get you something to like clean it off and to wrap it up. And so I'm looking at it, and it's just black. And I don't want to be over dramatic. It's not like my whole back was burned. It was probably about the size of, for those of you who are watching, probably like about this big, maybe like the size of like a, people don't know what 50-cent pieces are anymore, but I can't think of any other word besides that. But yeah, it's not a huge burn, but it was a burn, you know? So anyway, so I'm freaking out, and my friend is in the bathroom with me, and she's kind of trying to make it better, and it's not really helping because I'm just so upset at this point. And then homeboy, the owner of the brand, comes in, and he's like, it's all gonna be fine. And I was like, someone needs to get him the fuck out of here, because I will literally lose my mind if he doesn't leave this room immediately. So he leaves, and everyone just kind of bummed out, which I understand. Like, it's a shitty thing to happen, but no one was making me feel better. Everyone was making me feel worse. Kind of like I had ruined the shoot. I'm like, I didn't want to be burned by a fire dancer today. So the energy was just strange. And so we end up walking to, there was one like pharmacy that was closed, but I think we knocked, or it had like one of those kind of garagey type doors, and it was open like a slat. And I remember someone, maybe me, maybe the producer, was like, we just need some maybe the photographer, honestly, I really don't remember, asked if we could get some like bandages and stuff. So they gave us some gauze, and I wrapped my hand. I don't know if anything was on my back, maybe a bandage or something. And so then we go back to the hotel, and I'm like, okay, let's get back to the Palapa. Obviously it's a wrap for the day. And then I remember someone came to me and was like, well, we kind of wanted to like go get a drink since the shoot's over. Like, are you okay with that? And I'm like, obviously not. But I don't even know if I said sure or if I said no. I don't know. Or even if it was asked to me, or if it was just said, like, we're going to go grab a drink. And so I'm like, okay. So the makeup artist and I stay in the hotel, because she's also over it at this point. She's been over it for a long time as well. And everybody else like goes to a bar, and maybe they were also getting food. I don't know. But they ended up staying out until like 2 a.m. Again, I'm going to look at the receipts. Yeah. Okay. So I just checked, and the photo that I took of us back at the Palapa is at 1:34 a.m. So that's when we finally got back, and I was able to take a shower and assess my wounds. I was literally covered in coconut oil, sweat, dirt, sand, napalm gel, flaking skin. It was disgusting. All I wanted to do was shower at that point. Also, not only have I been burned at this point, but we have been shooting for 16, 17 hours. So I was so exhausted, and yeah, all I wanted to do was take a shower at this point. So shower, go to sleep. And then I think we didn't fly back until like midday the next day. Also, back to me being covered in coconut oil. I think that's the only reason why my hair didn't light on fire, because coconut oil is not flammable. So if I would have had like hairspray in my hair, I probably would have lit up like the 4th of July. And also, it was so close to my face. Like, it was right up here on my shoulder, like top of my shoulder, for those who are listening, which is obviously insanely close to my face. So I'm very thankful that neither of those two things happened. Anyway, so go to sleep, wake up the next day, fly back. I don't even remember the next day because I was just in dismay. And as soon as I get back, my mom's like, you need to go to the emergency room and get it checked out just to make sure it's not infected, get it cleaned correctly, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I do. Go to the emergency room. And unfortunately for me, the burn is infected. So if you don't like graphic descriptions, I would maybe skip the next couple of minutes. But basically, so I had this giant bubble of a bump on my hand. Maybe I'll include some photos. I don't know, trigger warning. And then like a black circle on my back. And then like you could see the part where my skin was missing in the middle of that. And so they do this great thing called debride the skin, or like debride the wound when you have a burn, to like get all that skin off. So they basically like scrub it. So as you can imagine, that felt really great. And then they just kind of bandage my hand, whatever, and give me like the proper care instructions for the next couple of months, because it takes burns a really long time to heal. And during that time, you're at high risk for getting infected. So I basically had to keep it covered up for like 3 months, which was really annoying because it was the summer. I was going to Coachella like shortly after that. And also I had jobs and stuff, which I had to keep my back bandaged. I had to, reapply the ointments and the creams and the wound stuff so that it didn't scar and all the stuff every single day, and keep it covered. And my hand healed super quickly because it wasn't as bad of a burn. But yeah, it was just really irritating. And then obviously I had to go through the process of being like, okay, so who's going to pay for this? Because I had to, pay out of pocket for my medical bills, because as Kylie and I mentioned on our last episode, we don't have health insurance. So that emergency room visit was out of pocket. And then number 2, I emailed my agency to be like, I worked for 16 hours. That's 2 days of work. So if they think they're going to pay me for 1 day, they got another thing coming. So I remember that I for sure got paid for 2 days of work, but my hospital bills ended up coming out of my pocket. So it was just a really shitty trip and a really bad shoot, clearly. And the only thing that the owner of the brand had to say to me was, instead of being 100% perfect now, you're only 99.9% perfect. And that's a direct quote. So anyway, yeah, that's probably my craziest story that I have on a set. And, it's just unfortunate that there are not safety precautions put in to protect us. I know on like movie sets or like SAG affiliated commercials, which is like the Screen Actors Guild, there's a lot of rules and precautions set in place, and there's people on the set if you're doing some sort of dangerous stunt to make sure that everything goes okay and that you're protected, which I know that doesn't always happen on those projects as well, but at least there is an effort to try to protect the talent. Whereas when you're a model, you're just doing stuff and no one is there to protect you and make sure it doesn't go wrong. And if it does go wrong, then who's going to help you? Who's going to pay for it? You are. So it's just unfortunate. Like I said, things could have been a lot worse. I'm totally fine today. I do have a scar, but it's barely noticeable. I took really good care of it, so it's fine. But, there are girls who have been hurt on sets in ways that they probably never recovered from. And the only person that's paying for that at the end of the day is you. So anyway, that's my story of the time I got burned by a fire dancer. And it makes a really good 2 truths, 1 lie, at least. You got to find a silver lining. I never worked for that brand again, as I'm sure you could guess. And whenever I see the owner out in LA, I go ahead and walk the other way. But yeah, that's my crazy story for today. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you like this story time format. I can't remember if I said in the beginning of the episode, but this is the first episode that I've recorded since like post launch. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been listening so far. And I also would love to hear what you guys are interested in knowing about. if you like this like story time type format. My goal is to do a solo episode every other episode and then an interview every other episode. So like kind of alternate between the two. So yeah, hopefully the next episode will be another interview. I have a couple lined up. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you have any questions or comments, or if you have any crazy stories and you're a model and you want them featured on the podcast, or if you want to be interviewed, go on over to the It's Not Pretty podcast and send me a DM, and I will see you / talk to you in the next one. Bye.